At 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, the silence of Willowbrook Estates was shattered by a sound that would cost one woman $2.3 million and 8 years of her freedom. Clang. It was the distinct, biting sound of industrial bolt cutters snapping through hardened steel. To Bethany Kensington Wright, the president of the Homeowners Association, that sound represented victory. The removal of an unsightly vehicle that marred her perfect, beige suburban kingdom. To me, listening to the security alert halfway across the world in a deployment tent, that sound was something else entirely, a federal felony. The chain she just cut didn't belong to a landscaper or a rebellious teenager. It secured a Jeep Wrangler belonging to a federal drug task force. It was loaded with $347,000 worth of classified surveillance technology, encrypted comms, and active investigation data. I'm Marcus Tank Rodriguez, an Army Reserve MP and federal agent. While I was overseas dismantling cartels, a suburban dictator decided to declare war on my property. She thought she was towing an eyesore. She was actually triggering a national security incident. It started 3 months earlier when I inherited my grandmother Rose's house. Willowbrook Estates is the kind of neighborhood where the grass is measured with rulers and the silence is heavy with judgment. For $150 a month in HOA dues, you bought the privilege of being watched. Grandma Rose raised me there after my parents died, teaching me to stand up to bullies. Mijo, she'd say, you fight back, but you do it the right way. I intended to keep the house as a safety net, renting it out while I deployed. But Bethany Kensington Wright had other plans. A 52-year-old real estate agent with a live, laugh, love sign in her foyer and a heart made of ice, Bethany had turned the HOA presidency into a throne. Her husband, Carl, sat on the city council, providing the political cover that made her feel untouchable. 2 weeks into my deployment, the first email hit. Violation notice. Unauthorized commercial vehicle. My government-issued Jeep, parked in a driveway, was the target. It had federal decals, sure, but to Bethany, it was just work truck trash. She cited a $50 daily fine. My sister, Maya, a soft-spoken middle school teacher looking after the place, tried to intervene. She took copies of my deployment orders and the federal vehicle authorization to Bethany's door. Bethany didn't even look at the papers. Rules are rules, she told Maya, looking down her nose. If your brother can't follow community standards, maybe this neighborhood isn't right for your family. That was the first red flag. The second was the threat. She told Maya that Carl knew the school district superintendent, implying that Maya's teaching job could be at risk if we made a fuss. Maya called me in tears, but as she cried, she mentioned something strange. Tank, it's not just us. The Johnsons got cited for their motorcycle. Sarah Martinez got fined for garden gnomes. Every military family is getting hit. I told Maya to dig. She went through Grandma's old papers and found the original HOA bylaws from 1987. Buried in Section 4, Paragraph B, government vehicles, emergency services, and law enforcement vehicles are exempt from commercial storage restrictions. Bethany wasn't enforcing rules. She was fabricating them. She was banking on residents being too intimidated to read the fine print. But this wasn't just about parking. This was targeted harassment of a protected class, military families by corrupt board. 48 hours later, Bethany escalated. A registered letter arrived. Immediate removal order. She gave us 24 hours to move the Jeep or face emergency towing. I contacted JAG, Judge Advocate General. Staff Sergeant Patricia Williams took one look at the file and practically started vibrating with rage. Rodriguez, she said, the Service Members Civil Relief Act, SCRA, protects you from this, but the fact that it's federal property? She's threatening to steal from the U.S. government. Williams filed a formal complaint, triggering a federal military liaison review. But back home, Maya found the smoking gun. In a stack of old meeting minutes, she found a letter from Bethany to the City Planning Commission advising against military housing assistance in Willowbrook because transient military populations degrade community investment. This was systematic discrimination. Then, Bethany made it personal. She hired ExecuSafe Security to patrol the neighborhood. They parked outside Grandma's house, logging the Jeep every hour. Maya called me, panic in her voice. Tank, the neighbors are whispering. The guards are telling people the vehicle is dangerous. Parents at school are looking at me differently. I countered. I contacted my task force supervisor, Captain Sarah Chun. When I explained that private security was logging the movements of a vehicle used for cartel surveillance, she didn't laugh. Rodriguez, she said, we need them to hang themselves. Let the cameras roll. I remotely accessed the Jeep's internal security system. The footage was damning. At 1:43 a.m., Bethany was seen using a flashlight to peer into the Jeep, photographing the dashboard equipment. She was trying to document the interior of a classified vehicle. She wasn't just being a Karen. She was conducting unauthorized surveillance on federal assets. The breaking point was that Tuesday morning. Maya's phone buzzed me awake. Tank, she's doing it. She's got a tow truck. I watched the live feed. Bethany, disheveled in her bathrobe, was directing a flatbed from Discount Dave's Towing. No paperwork, just cash in hand. The driver hooked up the chains. Then he paused. He saw the federal plates and the warning decals. He unhooked the chains, got back in his cab, and drove off, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. He knew better. Bethany screamed after him. I am the HOA President. I have authority. When the truck vanished, she snapped. She grabbed a pair of bolt cutters from her garage and marched to the gate of my driveway. Clang. She cut my security chain. Then, in a stroke of genius stupidity, she changed the padlock on the community gate, effectively locking the federal vehicle in and preventing legitimate access. If he wants his truck, she shrieked at Maya, who was recording everything, he can follow proper procedure. She had just obstructed federal agents, tampered with government property, and attempted theft. The response was swift. I triggered the vehicle's tamper alert. This isn't a car alarm. It pings Homeland Security. Within minutes, federal marshals were dispatched. When Marshal Jennifer Torres arrived at the gate, Bethany tried to block her. This is private property. You have no jurisdiction. Marshal Torres didn't blink. Ma'am, open this gate or face immediate arrest for obstruction of federal justice. Bethany opened the gate, but the war had just begun. I landed stateside 72 hours later. The air in Grandma's kitchen was thick with tension, but Maya looked different. She wasn't the scared teacher anymore. She was a woman on a warpath. Tank, look at this, she said, spreading financial records across the table. Maya had used her teacher network to acquire 5 years of HOA financials. It was a disaster. $184,000 in community funds had been diverted to consulting fees paid to a shell company owned by Cartwright. If he wants his truck, she shrieked at Maya, who was recording everything, he can follow proper procedure. She had just obstructed federal agents, tampered with government property, and attempted theft. The response was swift. I triggered the vehicle's tamper alert. This isn't a car alarm. It pings Homeland Security. Within minutes, federal marshals were dispatched. When Marshal Jennifer Torres arrived at the gate, Bethany tried to block her. This is private property. You have no jurisdiction. Marshal Torres didn't blink. Ma'am, open this gate or face immediate arrest for obstruction of federal justice. Bethany opened the gate, but the war had just begun. I landed stateside 72 hours later. The air in Grandma's kitchen was thick with tension, but Maya looked different. She wasn't the scared teacher anymore. She was a woman on a warpath. Tank, look at this, she said, spreading financial records across the table. Maya had used her teacher network to acquire 5 years of HOA financials. It was a disaster. $184,000 in community funds had been diverted to consulting fees paid to a shell company owned by Cartwright. But the real horror was the Willowbrook acquisition strategy. Carl's development company had pre-sold 47 properties to a national developer for luxury condos. Properties they didn't own yet. The plan was simple: harass vulnerable residents, military families, the elderly, until they sold cheap just to get out. They had targeted the Johnsons. They had targeted Mrs. Kowalski for her oxygen tank noise. And they had targeted Grandma Rose while she was dying in hospice, sending her stress-inducing violation notices to speed up the process. They didn't just annoy her, Tank, Maya whispered, tears in her eyes. They tortured her in her final weeks for profit. That was it. This wasn't about a Jeep anymore. This was a RICO case. We set up a war room in the living room. Captain Chun brought in Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez. When Martinez saw the evidence, the systematic fraud, the interstate commerce via the development deal, the coordinated harassment, she invoked the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act RICO. Maya's evidence was bulletproof. But Bethany and Carl weren't going down quietly. They launched a PR smear campaign. They hired a firm to paint me as an unstable veteran keeping dangerous weaponry in a family neighborhood. They attacked Maya's career, flooding the school district with complaints that she was radicalizing children. But they overplayed their hand. They slashed Maya's tires. Military scum was spray-painted on her windshield. That was a mistake. Threatening a federal witness triggers the FBI. The vandalism was investigated as domestic terrorism. We had federal protective details on Maya within hours. Carl, sweating through his expensive suits, tried to use his city council influence to squash the investigation. We caught him on a wiretap pressuring the police chief to ignore reports from military families. That's conspiracy to violate civil rights. Then Bethany tried the unthinkable. She approached Maya outside a grocery store with an envelope containing $50,000 cash. "Take this, find a better neighborhood," she said. Attempted bribery of a federal witness carries a mandatory minimum sentence. Maya recorded the whole thing. The finale took place at the Willowbrook Community Center. It was packed. Bethany and Carl arrived expecting to bully their way through a standard meeting. Instead, they walked into a federal ambush. Maya took the podium first. "For 5 years, you have waged war on this community," she said, her voice amplified to the hundreds of residents and news crews outside. "You embezzled our money. You targeted our veterans. You tortured our elderly." Federal Prosecutor Martinez stepped forward. "Bethany Kensington Wright, Carl Wright, the United States government is charging you with theft of federal property, wire fraud, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy under the RICO Act." The color drained from Bethany's face. She looked for Carl, but he was already trying to sneak out the back exit, straight into the arms of 2 federal marshals. "You can't do this!" Bethany screamed as the handcuffs clicked. "I am the president." "Not anymore," Marshal Torres said. The fallout was absolute. Bethany Kensington Wright was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. She was ordered to pay $647,000 in restitution. The judge's closing statement made headlines. "You treated your neighbors as subjects in a kingdom of your own making. Today, reality reclaims its territory." Carl received 6 years and a lifetime ban for public office. His development company collapsed, and the assets were seized to pay the victims. But the best part? The neighborhood transformation. Maya was elected the new HOA president by a landslide. She immediately froze the accounts, audited the books, and implemented the Willowbrook Military Family Bill of Rights, which has since become a model for HOAs across the country. The property values in Willowbrook didn't crash because of the military element. They skyrocketed by 31%. It turns out, people want to live in a neighborhood where the leadership isn't corrupt and the community protects its own. As for me, I married Elena Martinez, the prosecutor who helped take them down. We bought the house next to Grandma's. Every morning, I walk out to my driveway. The Jeep is there. The grass is a little long sometimes. And nobody says a damn word, except "thank you for your service." Bethany made a $2.3 million mistake that Tuesday morning. She forgot the golden rule Grandma Rose taught me. You can push a lot of people around, but never pick a fight with a family that has nothing left to lose and the federal government on speed dial. HOA stats and knowledge nugget asterisk. According to the Community Associations Institute, roughly 74 million Americans live in HOA communities. While most function normally, cases of embezzlement and fraud are rising. Under the Service Members Civil Relief Act, SCRA, military personnel have robust protections against civil litigation and property seizure while deployed. Furthermore, 18 U.S. Code Section 641 makes theft of government property worth more than $1,000 a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. A fact Bethany learned the hard way. If you've ever dealt with a tyrant in a golf cart, drop a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served.